is the day I could begin learning with my son. That calls for a simcha gedola and a mishteh, nothing else. Yesterday we learned Parshas Vayera, and we read about Avraham Avinu. And it says in the first couple of Sukkim, Vayoretz Avram, Vayimar Avram. Then it says, V'la'oparotz, Vayiten el anar, Vayimaher. Ran, hurried. The avodah of Avraham Avinu was bizrizus. Tremendous rizus. His avodah was with tremendous mesiras nefesh. He was sick. He was old. He was probably in great pain. So maybe someone will say, no, Avraham Avinu, what does that have to do with us? I know we have to Mosai, Maisei, Avoisai, but it's Avraham Avinu, what does it have to do with us? But in this doyer, Nifter, not so long ago, we had a Groiser Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Nosson Tzvi. Rav Nosson Tzvi was a sick man. He had every excuse in the world not to do what he did. This is a story that took place a few weeks before he was nifter. He was scheduled to say shir in the yeshiva. He was in bed, and bed by him meant fully clothed with his shoes on, ready to go. He couldn't lift himself off the bed. Couldn't pick himself up off the bed. When it came closer, he called to the people in the room and he said to them, at least help me get off the bed, help me walk to the door of my apartment, so I will at least make a shtadlus. I'll do what I can. You know, of course, they try to tell him, Rashiva Kenisht, you can't get off the bed. You don't have to go say a shir. But he insisted. So they lifted him off the bed, and slowly, step by step, they walked him to the door. He was utterly exhausted. At the door he said, okay, we got so far, let's go outside in the street. So they went out in the street, and they walked another block. He was more exhausted. Another block. And another block. He was literally carried into the Beis Medrash, literally had to just about crawl up to the bima, and he said a shir. So in our door, in our time, Siras Nefesh, Zrizus, and underlying it all by Avraham Avinu, by Rav Nosson Tzvi, is a very, very key word. And the key word is Rotzai. The desire to do what one has to do, that desire makes it possible for a person to do the impossible. But without that desire, nowhere. You have to have that desire. Mesiras Nefesh. Hard is good. Some way the American people have walked away from hard is good. Hard is good. Failings lead to resilience. That's a major mistake in the American psyche. You fail. Little children, does any mother hear a little child when you teach him to walk and he falls, what do? You say, you don't have to walk. I mean, you're going to hurt yourself. You pick him up and you clap when he takes 2 steps, and you clap more when he takes 3 steps. But falling is part of the process.
But first, let me give you a little side remark, something that most people don't know at all. When we learn the Sedra, we learn it in Rosh Kodesh. Most people sitting in this room, and most people who go to shul, who go to Yeshiva, are familiar with basic Rosh Kodesh. Vayadaber Hashem el Moshe Lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe the following. Teach it in Yiddish, whatever language you teach. but you know what the words mean. Then you say the Targum, and you don't know a thing. Umale el Hashem el Moshe Meimar. What does that mean? The Targum is filled with funny words that are difficult to understand. But I want to tell you something. In the time when these halachas were established, in the time when the Tanoim and the Amoraim, the great Chachamim of yesteryear, taught us that you have to say Chumash and then Targum. It happens to be that nobody understood Hebrew in those days. They had no idea of what the words in the Chumash meant. But they spoke Targum. That was the spoken language. And the Targum was an explanation. It took the words of Chumash, which were in the language that no one understood, that was Hebrew, foreign language to almost everyone, and it explained it in the language that everyone spoke and understood. And the name of that language was Targum. Now there are two mitzvahs concerning the Torah Kedoshah. One is a mitzvah called Kriyas HaTorah. Kriyas HaTorah is something that you, Hamakayim, when you read the psukim, the better is to understand what you read. But you get the mitzvah even if you don't understand it. Because Torah Shebiksav, the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, written in Hebrew, written in Lashon Kodesh. If you read those psukim, you get a mitzvah, and the mitzvah is Kriyas HaTorah. Just reading, saying the psukim. You talk here about fathers and grandfathers. Surely must have learned the end of Perek Lulav HaGozel, which tells you what you do when you bring up children. And it says, Hischil L'daver, when the child begins to speak. Right? What are the first words that a child speaks? Some children, the first word is Mami, and Daddy, Tati. Many other children, it's natural. First word is mine. The child is there to fight for his reason, his rights. But Hitzchel Adaber, he's saying a couple of words. Ofif Malam by Torah. The father has to start teaching him Torah. How much Torah could you learn when you're just beginning to speak? So the Gemara says, my Torah. Two things. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Of course, everyone, I'm sure, learned that. Part of the first couple of words that they spoke in this world. Say that before going to sleep. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And the Gemara says a couple of other words. Torah Tziv Alon and Moshe, Mayosha Kehilas Yaakov. That's what Torah is. And the Farshim say, even if you don't understand those words, that's enough for the beginning. That's the mitzvah of Kriyas HaTorah. Besides reading the Torah, there's a mitzvah called Limud HaTorah. For Limud HaTorah means learning Torah. For Limud HaTorah, it's not enough to say the words. Limud HaTorah requires that you understand what you're saying. And since most people in the early days didn't understand a word of Hebrew, so in order to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Limud HaTorah, so there you had to explain it. And you explain it by saying Targum. So one mikra is to be Mekayim Kriyas HaTorah. The other mikra is to say the posik plus the taich. And the taich is the words of Torah, of Targum that we follow Kriyas HaTorah with, and that Targum is to use the language that was spoken, that everyone understood, and to explain the pasuk, and for that you get the mitzvah of limud haTorah, and for the first time you get the mitzvah of kriyas haTorah. The future is the future of every Erlich Yid who looks and hopes and is followed to Hashem Yisborach to become a Talmid Chacham, be able to attach himself to the Heilige Torah and to understand and to learn and to grow and grow, become a tzaddik, become a Torah. And there's no question at all that will happen. It will bring tremendous nachas to parents, but it will be greater nachas to the Rebbeinu Shalom, who's looking proudly towards Kindle and the grown-ups and Klal Yisrael. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, "Vayomer lecha," like the pasuk says, "Avdi oto," you are my servant, Yisrael asher b'cha esporah, Yid of whom I am proud. Provide that they should come and the Eivers will be proud of all of us, point proud with pride to Klal Yisrael.